Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my fellow co hosts, we review films either current or classic on this show. Although we're changing things up a little bit this week. Rather than picking one, sometimes we pick two movies to review. We're probably going to have, I don't know, at least 20 movies coming your way. We are counting down our top 10 films of 2021 on this week's episode. You might be asking yourself, okay, it's February 1st. Well, at least it is right now. I don't know what it is relative to when you're listening. Why are we doing a top 10 list in February, a whole month into the new year? And the reason for that is simple. There were some movies that came out in 2021 that weren't available in wide release. They weren't available everywhere until very late in the year. Some of them we didn't get to catch up with until January when they were available in our area or became available on streaming. And so it seemed only fair to wait a little while to do our list so that we could incorporate all the films of 2021 that technically count for that year. So, maybe we're a little late. Maybe we're just fashionable. I don't know. But either way, we're going to be coming at you with our top 10 lists. Some of our listeners have shared their top 10 lists as well. We're going to be sharing some details from those lists a little bit later on as part of our broadcast as well. But I've been talking a lot already. Let me introduce you to my wonderful co-host. Jim Pugliafico is with us on the show this week. Babe, how's it going?
Great, babe. I'm good. Thank you. I'm super excited for this show because, it kind of caps off the year last year in movies anyway. And there's just so many movies we're going to just mention in our top 10 and just talk about a little bit and kind of share with each other and with anybody else who's listening, like what tripped our trigger last year. So I'm super excited.
Glad to hear that you are excited. Definitely a good mention there about finding out each other's top tens. Folks, we have not shared our top 10 list yet. We have no idea. We might suspect certain movies might appear on certain lists, but we don't have confirmation yet. So this is going to be a fun adventure of finding out for us too. And as part of that adventure, we have William Lindis with us in the studio. Hey, Will, how are you?
Hey, Brad. Hey, Jim. Doing great. This is one of my favorite episodes that we do each year because this top 10 list, top 20 list, top 30 list, depending on how much overlap we all have amongst us, is a nonstop celebration of film, right? Like all of these films are ones that one member of this cast or another is going to 100% go to bat for. And I love the format of this one. As we go through the episode and start talking about the different films that we enjoy, this isn't our normal format of like point, counterpoint, like, oh, I liked it, I didn't like it. This is just a chance for us to celebrate something that we're all passionate about and love. So, man, I can't wait. This one is so much fun. I can't wait to share.
Definitely a fun episode that we look forward to every year for sure. Anybody who's tuning in for our top 10 lists, and feel free to share some of your picks as well in the live chat or even in the comments on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. If you're joining us through the magic of digital tape delay and can't be part of that live chat. But as part of this process, we're not going to be spoiling any of the films we talk about, just a heads up. So if you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to talk about all these movies I haven't seen yet, not to worry. This is almost like a really extended plug section. We're going to talk about some movies that we really loved. We'll tell you why we love them, but we're not going to go into like a 5-minute explanation of like what each movie is and what it's about. We might give you just a little bit of that as we're talking about it. But don't worry, we're going to do our best to protect you from having your innocence spoiled where these films are concerned. So all of that said and out of the way, Jim, Will, are you ready to get to our top 10 films of 2021?
Yeah,
Yes,
you might
indeed.
say been waiting all year for
Let's
this one.
count them down. I'm ready for the surprises. Let's go.
All right. Sounds good. Well, then I don't know if Jim's going to have any kind of sound drop, but I'm going to do it anyway, just in case you find something bad you want to use for editing.
Or if you
Here
have
we
a
go.
suggestion. Yeah. Yeah.
Here we go. Our top 10 films of 2021. All right. So we are going to go in order, round by round. We're going to kick things off with Will, then we'll punt to Jim, and then it will go to me. We'll probably take a couple minutes each as we talk about these films, what we like. What we won't be doing is having an extended discussion about each film. We have so many movies to talk about. We may say, oh my God, that was such a great pick. I love that you went there. But again, being mindful of spoilers, we don't want to get ourselves in trouble by having extended conversations. So just be aware, expect that. Jim, yes?
And we also have some top 10 lists that were submitted by some of our great folks, friends who listen to the show, or watch the show. So we're excited to see what's on those lists as well.
It's one of those things where I've been trying not to look at those lists. I know they were submitted earlier in the week, but I kind of wanted it to be a surprise. Will, thanks so much for being the one to bite that bullet and compile those for us. Can't wait to take a look at those as we get deeper into the show and find out what some of our listeners thought. And of course, through the live chat as well, folks. Feel free to share some of your thoughts, some of your picks. We may highlight those on air. But let's get this thing rocking and rolling. We got a whole lot of movies to talk about. Let me just clarify with you guys real quick. Your top 10 lists, are they numbered 10 to 1 in ranking, or is it just 10 movies that you loved in no particular order?
You're asking me. I tried I tried my best to do a ranking 10 to 1. That is today, as of this moment. I mean, we've used this disclaimer every time we've done this. If you ask me next week, that top 10 might be different because you sit on different films and they kind of steep in your consciousness and they might rise or fall or whatever. So yeah, it's going to be 10 to 1, at least for today.
10 to 1 for Jim. Will, how about you?
Yeah, same here. I mean, I think that it's all a matter of the snapshot in time, right? I mean, I put out a top 25 video on the last day of 2021, and there are some adjustments in my top 10 for this episode versus then because a whole month has passed, right? So just like that video was a snapshot of December 31st, this top 10 list is a snapshot of February 1st. Man, if we came back and did on December 31st of this year, a look back at the top 10 from the previous year, this list would be completely different too. So yeah, it's ranked. I stand by my rankings, but I also stand by them with the disclaimer of I'm also allowed to change my mind.
We're mercurial bears. We can change our minds. It's okay. Mine are ranked from 10 to 1 as well. And of course, we've got some honorable mentions that we're going to be going through. But sounds like we all kind of took the same approach with our top 10 list. And seeing as we did, let's start at the number 10 slot. Will, what was your number 10?
This one I think is going to be a pretty easy pick, non-controversial. I think we're all going to be big fans of this one. My number 10 was Wes Anderson's The French Dispatch.
Get that right out of the way.
Just get him out of the way. Get it out of the way. No, this is, I mean, I enjoy what Wes Anderson does as a filmmaker. I think he has a very specific style, and I think that he's able to blend kind of the visual artistry with drawing very specific performances from his actors, and is able to find very specific emotional beats that all weave together into something that's very specifically Wes Anderson, right? And so The French Dispatch, this is his love letter to journalists and to the editorial process, all set with a large ensemble cast telling a series of stories, each one of which is an article in the final issue of The French Dispatch as it's framed within the movie. There are a lot of great performances in this. Bill Murray has a very prominent role. Jeffrey Wright is great here. Timothy Chalamet, Adrian Brody, Frances McDormand, Steve Park, Tilda Swinton. Huge cast. But my absolute favorite here, there is one of the stories has Benicio Del Toro in a story about an artist behind bars, and it's one of the more moving things that I saw over this last year. Surprisingly, it really did a good job of capturing a very specific emotional beat and delivering it incredibly well. So yeah, The French Dispatch is really good. I love its vignette storyline. I love that you can like watch it in parts, or you can watch the whole thing, and you can watch it again and again and always get some sort of like visual narrative or performance candy. So yeah, The French Dispatch, it's the goods. It's number 10.
Well, I know you like that movie. I do like. I didn't actually get to see this one this year, but I've seen Wes Anderson. I mean, I loved the first half of his movie before this. The Fantastic Mr. Fox was good, really good. Um, so I like a lot of what he does. I just haven't caught up to this one yet, so that's why it's not going to be mentioned on my list. But I think it's going to be mentioned in the show later on.
Keeping an eye on Brad's list.
Yeah, it's probably on Brad's list. Yeah.
Listen, I'm just gonna dispel that bullshit right now. I am no Wes Anderson fan. I don't think I've liked any of his movies that I've seen that much. But Will, I'm overjoyed that you loved this movie as much as you did. Different directors are for different people, and that's okay. So very, very cool. Sounds like a solid pick for you.
And it'd be boring if all of our lists were the same, right?
Yeah, right. Who wants that? Definitely not me.
Nope.
I want this list of movies that we're compiling to be something that someone can pick up and say, oh my gosh, here's like 20 films that the Movie Bears podcast endorses that I can go watch right now and have a hell of a good time with. And
yes,
that's got to be varied. You know, there's got to be a good selection there. So awesome. Jim, what was your number 10?
Yeah, so my number 10 is a movie. I don't know if it's going to be talked about on the show again. It's one that kind of knocked me over this year unexpectedly. It's called The Eyes of Tammy Fay. And this one, I think, kind of snuck under a lot of people's radars, but it's a great, fictionalized retelling of the life of Tammy Fay and Jim Baker, through their young life, through the PTL club and all that stuff that they did, and their shady deals and all that, but through the eyes, of course, of Tammy Fay. Jessica Chastain is great in this. Somebody we talked about for Spider-Man is Andrew Garfield, right? He's in this. He's very good as Jim Baker. Right, Will? I mean, yeah, he's in this, right?
Yeah, he is. I just don't know if he's in any other movies. So
I
would say let's just focus on this one.
That's true. Okay, and so The Eyes of Tammy Fay. I mean, there's it's no secret, I don't think, in the LGBT community that she was a very unlikely quote unquote ally through some very tough times, through the HIV crisis of the 80s and so forth. I think it's worth it just for some of that content that's in this movie. But Jessica Chastain's performance is amazing. The Eyes of Tammy Fay is my number 10.
Cool pick. This one didn't make my list, but I think there's a lot to enjoy here. I definitely think Jessica Chastain pulled in a heavy hitter performance, and like you mentioned, Andrew Garfield, between this and Tick Tick Boom, he's had, and whatever else he may have appeared in this year, he's had a hell of a year. So yeah, good pick.
Yep. Whatever else.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much for your number 10. Sean in the chat says, hey, beauties. Glad to see you all. Looking adorably beautiful as always. Oh, Sean, thank you. Sean gave his top 10 list, and he's got movies like Free Guy, Spider-Man No Way Home, Zack Snyder's Justice League, The Eternals, Godzilla vs. Kong. Sean, some of these... Yeah, some of these movies, Sean, I don't know if they'll appear on Jim or Will's list, but some of them may appear on mine, starting with my number 10 film of 2021, which was a film starring Ryan Reynolds. You may know where I'm going with this. I'm going to read the IMDb summary for this film, which should keep you from getting spoiled. A bank teller discovers he's actually a non-playing character inside a brutal open-world video game. an MMO, massively multiplayer online game. That film, of course, is Free Guy. It's funny seeing the trailer for Free Guy. I didn't think I was going to like it that much. But I was like, we got to see it for the podcast. Grumble, 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 whatever. Went to see the movie, and I don't think I've laughed that hard in a movie in a really, really long time. And you guys know comedy is kind of a weird thing for me. Someone who like really understands comedy, maybe you can tell me why this movie tripped so many of my triggers, whereas a lot of other comedies don't. But this was a really fun action flick. It's kind of a love letter to video games. It's also very satirical. It makes fun of video games quite a bit, which I think is great. And it's very self-aware. It's very meta. Without going into any kind of spoilers, I will just say I think Ryan Reynolds did a tremendous job here. And yeah, this was probably one of the most fun movies I've seen in the last several years. So that's my number 10.
Yeah, that was a really fun surprise this year. Didn't know what to expect out of this movie. We know it's not really based on a video game property per se, but it does revolve around video games. And we know how video game movies have not really been great overall, I would say. But this one was just fun. It just had a lot of fun with the genre. And, Ryan Reynolds was, his comedic timing is great. So it was a fun surprise.
Yeah, co-signed. Again, didn't make my pick, didn't make my list, but it was a fun movie. I think that it defied expectations. I think Ryan Reynolds was a lot of fun in this, and I think that if you've ever played a video game, especially like any type of multiplayer video game, I think then you can recognize a lot of the beats and the humor here. Brad, you mentioned like, if someone could explain comedy. I think you have that contextual experience. I know you've played those types of games before, so you could see like, I've been in that experience before. I've seen this weird thing happen in a video game before, and now I'm seeing it on screen. So cool pick. And a good pick for you too.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Well, that is our round of number 10 picks. Let's move on to our number 9s. Will, what was your number 9 pick?
All right. So this is where I'm going to go off book a little bit. At least as far as Jim might know, if he kind of knows some of the ones that have been on my list. So my number 9 is a film that I actually got a chance to catch up with just a few weeks ago. It is available on Prime right now. And it is a movie by Asghar Farhadi. The movie is called A Hero. This is a filmmaker who he subtly puts out just some of the best films of the year every year, between A Separation and The Salesman recently coming out in previous years. This is an Iranian story about this man. He's in debtor's prison, right? He couldn't afford to pay his debts back, but he's allowed to go off on a 2-day weekend vacation trip
family
thing.
Visit. Right.
Yeah, and during that family visit, he comes across a large sum of money, and he's sort of given the moral dilemma of, do I use this to pay off my debt and maybe try to get out of my prison sentence, or do I return it to the rightful owner? Because it was money that was inside of a woman's handbag, right? So I won't tell you necessarily which way he goes with that, but this is a story about what happens when you make a specific decision, and what happens when all of the different people in the world, including people who you know and then people who don't know and have heard about your story, all apply meaning to your story that wasn't necessarily the meaning that was a part of that story. It is not a bombastic story. It's a very subtle and nuanced story in the way it delivers. It doesn't play for big emotions. It plays for small pivots and small turns, but it is always gripping, always compelling, and just start to finish, just an incredible exploration of morality and what it means to practice your own morality. So it's called A Hero, and it's my number 9.
Good pick, Will. I did get a chance to catch up on this one late. It's further down my list. It didn't make my list actually, but I really loved it. I love his films. We loved The Separation. Brad, you remember watching that?
Yes, such a good movie.
He's really good at these tense dramas that kind of examine the moralities of all sides of an issue, and that's what Will was getting at there. So this one is the same thing. really good, and it kind of reminded me of like what goes on social media sometimes. You know what I mean? Even though this one didn't play out really on social media per se. It was a good commentary too. I liked it.
I haven't seen it, but if both of you are singing its praises, it sounds like it's a pretty damn
Yeah.
good film. So,
Yeah.
well, glad to hear that it made your list. Jim, what was your number 9?
My number 9 is a film. All right, so I'm going to say this right up front. 6 of my films either revolve around music in some way or another, which is weird, right? It just happened to be that way. And they're not all documentaries, but this one is. This one is Summer of Soul, called Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised. This was a film we caught out at the Sundance Film Festival, and it was directed by a DJ called Questlove. If you guys are into, DJ and popular culture, Questlove was the one who brought this film to be. And what it is it's a documentary. It's actually a filmed concert that took place in 1969. A concert called the Harlem Cultural Festival, which was going to be kind of like the at the time the African American community's answer to Woodstock, right? They wanted their own festival in Harlem to celebrate African American music and culture, Black pride and unity. This thing was filmed. It happened. It was great, and then it never saw the light of day, ever. Like it was never televised, and it sat in a basement somewhere. Questlove somehow came across it, made it into this documentary. It was amazing. Like acts like Sly and the Family Stone, Stevie Wonder, B.B. King, Gladys Knight and the Pips. Just amazing. The Fifth Dimension. To just watch some of these legendary acts go through their stuff kind of in the prime of their careers was like so uplifting, and I loved it. It's called Summer of Soul. And it's right now it's on Hulu for if you have subscription, you can watch it. I strongly recommend it for anybody who loves music.
I'll make some time. We'll come back to this one on my part.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
This one did not make my list, Jim, but I think I watched like 3/4 of this movie with you. I came in late because I was working and you were watching it at the end of my work day. What I did see, I loved some incredible performances, and it's just crazy to think that this thing sat, in a dusty box somewhere for 50 years and then got made into this wonderful documentary. So solid pick. All right. My number 9 is a sci-fi epic film from director Denis Villeneuve. The IMDb description of this is a adaptation of a science fiction novel about the son of a noble family entrusted with the protection of the most valuable asset and the most vital element in the galaxy. The spice must flow. Saw the original Dune movie adaptation way back in the 80s. Not great. I'm just going to say that. So going into this film, you may be sensing a theme. I grumble a lot going into a lot of different movies. And I was just kind of like, oh, really? Another Dune? Do we need another one? But I was like part excited because I wanted to see if they did something better, but part just kind of dreading it because it was like, God, like, what are we going to get with this thing? It actually ended up being really, really, really good. An incredible cast in this film. Timothée Chalamet is fantastic. Rebecca Ferguson, Zendaya, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa. Just a lot of star power here, telling this really exceptional tale. That this isn't a spoiler. This is out there. This film is part 1. Part 2 has been greenlit. It is happening, but it's in early stages of that whole process, I think. So we may not get Dune Part 2 for a couple of years, but really loved this one. Everything from stunning visuals, incredible music, some really, really great action sequences. There's just a ton here to love. So I know this has made a lot of people's top 10 list for 2021. Didn't get it within my top 5, but I liked it enough that it made my number 9.
I'm so glad you picked this one because I get the spoiler. It didn't make the cut for me. It was one of the ones that almost made the cut for me, and just as I was doing my shuffle, I couldn't squeeze it in, and that hurt me to not include it. So I love the fact that if we have this MBP list of films that we are championing, this film still gets to be represented on that list, even if I wasn't able to slide it in there. So thank you for that, Brad. It's a great film.
Same with me. I really loved it. It just missed my list. I think what was impressive about this film for me is, no, I have not read the book, but everything I've heard, and it's very chewy. It's very dense, I guess you could say, in terms of story and characters and world building. But the way this film kind of parsed that out for the movie-going audience, I thought was probably, you book readers can probably tell me otherwise, but I thought the movie did a pretty damn good job of making this a digestible, entertaining movie. And it was like awe-inspiring to watch it and to listen to it on a big screen. I'm just glad I got the experience, got a chance to experience it that way.
For sure. Well, glad to hear that even if it didn't necessarily make your guys' lists, it was one that was up there, maybe in contention. All right, moving on to our number 8. Will, what was your number 8?
Well, I said I'd come back to it, and now is the time. My number 8 is Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised. I'm not going to go into the full description. Jim just did that. But just what I liked about this was, as someone who, this last year, I started screening for a music festival, like basically like films, either documentary or narrative, that were of a musical or music adjacent like bent. So I watched a lot of like music documentaries in 2021, and it's exciting for even into sort of a sea of seeing all of those things. Some of which, I mean, were amazing. But just having this film, I think, not only like stand out so much in my mind, but also to be such a big part of the general conversation. I think documentaries don't often get a chance to do that. Or when they do, it's usually because it's some sort of like sensationalist information, just like, who murdered who type thing. Or if it's like a band like the Beatles, because, the Beatles are an event in of themselves. But this one celebrated a lot of artists, none of them slouches, of course, but at this festival that was otherwise kind of forgotten in time, and we get to see it revitalized here. So of all the films to sort of get that glow up, I'm so glad that it was this one. Thank you, Questlove. Thank you for bringing us this film. Thank you, Hulu, for putting it out. Just so glad to have gotten a chance to see this one this year.
Yeah. Yep. Excellent.
All right. Awesome. Glad, Will, that one made your list as well. Jim, what was your number 8?
Yeah, that was a first repeat. And Will, thank you for the awesome lead in. I've got another music documentary to talk about, and you almost mentioned it. This one is the Beatles Get Back documentary, which was presented on Disney Plus in 3 parts. It's in 3 parts, so it's a long investment. But man, what an event this was! I mean, this was another one where there's a bunch of tape that was recorded when the Beatles were doing their Abbey Road sessions at Apple Studios and in another location. And we basically get to see, like, sit in on their recording sessions and their rehearsals and see them interact as a band, not just musically, but personally. For a music kid like me who grew up like listening to Beatles records, like actual records, turning around on the turntable, 45s, albums, and like kind of getting swept up a little bit in Beatlemania. I wasn't one of the fainting kids at Yankee Stadium or Shea Stadium or wherever they did that, but I was the kid in his room, listening over and over to Beatles songs, and to watch kind of that magic being made was fantastic. It's called The Beatles Get Back, and it was a documentary that was put together by Peter Jackson, right? And just fantastic. If you're a music person, you haven't had a chance to watch it, you owe yourself to watch it, even if it's in digestible chunks. It's astounding. It's on Disney Plus, as I mentioned. So yeah, it's the Beatles Get Back documentary.
All right. Great pick, Jim. I didn't get to see all of this with you, but I kind of dropped in and out, as I so often do when you're watching things. And I got to see some big chunks of it. And yeah, this is a really solid pick. I learned a lot about the Beatles that I didn't know. It was really interesting to see them just sitting around, like riffing with each other and like figuring stuff out. And like, these songs that I have loved my whole life, like the genesis of those, like we're just them sitting around smoking and talking and coming up with ideas, and then bam.
That was crazy.
It's incredible. So great pick. Awesome. All right. My number 8 pick, I will read you the synopsis. Legends collide as two of the most powerful forces of nature clash on the big screen in a spectacular battle for the ages. If you haven't figured it out yet, will I see the cogs working in your brain? I think
Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. SpaceX versus Meta. No, just kidding. Godzilla versus Kong. I know a lot of these top 10 lists tend to be filled with artsy fartsy indie movies, and for those who love them, I think that's fantastic. My list includes some brainless like action, craziness, and I'm okay with that. Such a treat to see Godzilla and Kong go head to head, squaring off in this incredible film. Is it the best movie in the whole world? No, it's not. That's why it's not higher on my list. There are things about this movie that make me cringe that I didn't like, but the pure spectacle of seeing these two titans throw down, and then some other things that happen in the film that I won't spoil, was just transportive for me. I was taken back to my childhood, watching old kaiju movies, on public TV, when I was like 8 or 9 years old. We've had Godzilla versus Kong before in some of the old Toho movies, but so great to see this happening with modern day graphics and effects, and the sound for this movie is just freaking incredible. Every time Godzilla roars or Kong just lets loose this guttural noise as he's about to like run at Godzilla, like it just reverberates through your whole body. It's incredible. So it definitely got my juices pumping. Kong and Godzilla, magic all around.
Yeah,
that's my number 8.
Fun pick. I mean, like I've not been as huge into like the more recent Godzilla movies, mainly because I haven't enjoyed what they've done with the human cast in them as much. And I think that one thing that was nice about Godzilla versus Kong for me is having both the Godzilla character and the Kong character, and each with their own human casts, and each all of those things. I felt like it allowed the things that were maybe turnoffs for me to actually turn into turn-ons. I enjoyed the Kong character specifically in this one, and the relationship he has with a younger character overall. So I think this is a fun choice, and one that you should have. There's no bad pick for these lists, right? Like the movies are movies, right? And so if it was one of your top 10 movies, it was one of your top 10 movies.
I'm so glad that I've seen Godzilla versus Kong now on two people's lists on this show. I couldn't find the space for it. I'm like, Jim, how can you face yourself putting a top 10 list together when there was a Godzilla film this year that you didn't put on your list? But I just could not give up a space for it. I'm sorry. But yeah, this was an event movie for me. I mean, for us. And it felt like that. And I came out of the movie thinking, that it was totally worth it. I loved pretty much every bit of it. And Godzilla wins a fight. No, does he? No, King Kong wins a fight. I don't know. I'm not going to spoil anything, but somebody wins a fight. Or do they? Maybe they don't. I don't know.
Maybe everybody wins. Maybe
they both win. I don't know.
Maybe they both get gold stars.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't remember. I remember it was Godzilla versus Kong versus Freddy versus Jason versus Alien versus Predator, and no matter who wins, we all lose.
There's some
I'd
heavy
watch
shit
that
that
movie.
goes down in this.
I suddenly have this vision in my head of Freddy Krueger like stabbing his claws into Godzilla, like to help him climb, like he's ascending his back or something. That'd be
Yeah.
great.
I like
Hamstracked. Hammy's with
I
us.
mean,
Hey, Hammy. He says nothing wrong with having some dumb fun on a list. Sometimes movies like that just hit the spot. Why not put them on the list? I feel validated, Hammy and Will and Jim, for having this movie on my list. It is a lot of dumb craziness, but it's definitely a lot of fun. So I'm glad it resonated with you folks. All right, moving on to our number 7s. Will, what's yours?
Yeah, I also wanted to go with a kind of a big blockbuster in this spot. So I chose the film Parallel Mothers, the new dramatic film by Pedro Almodovar. No, I am actually choosing that film. Not it
Oh, yeah.
is a drama. It's not a big blockbuster. Pedro Almodovar is the goods. He's another one of those filmmakers who, any given year, he just puts out like one of the best films of the year. Recently, he did Pain and Glory, which absolutely blew me away. I mean, but things like All About My Mother and Julieta and several others over the years. I mean, he's just constantly someone worth watching. This film stars Penelope Cruz and Melina Smith as two different women who both become mothers and give birth on the same day. They share a sort of like a pre-delivery room. So as they're going through they're sort of like chatting with one another, and it follows what happens to these two women. Penelope Cruz's character is this successful like fashion photographer. She's close to, I think she's like 40 in the film, and Melina Smith's character is a teenage mother, like kind of like late teens. And the two of them, the movie follows their story as it sort of weaves in and out of each other. Pedro Almodovar, first of all, he works very well with Penelope Cruz. I think that Penelope Cruz I think she's always a solid actress, but I think that she's at her best when paired with Pedro Almodovar, and I think he's at his best when paired with her. The two are just an amazing combo. This film is very soapy in that, like, there are a lot of like, ooh, delicious turns and twists as the story kind of weaves through it. But it's not a film that's predicated upon those. It's a film about, well, it's about legacy, and it's about family, and it's about all of these different things. But yeah, where this film ends up landing is so far from where the film begins, and the entire journey is just such a delight. Parallel Mothers, Pedro Almodovar. This is one that got a push way later in the season. In that, like, it did its screenings at the very end of last year, but is still doing a theatrical run now that's spreading out to areas. So it's probably opening in an area near you like now. So it's good. It's so good. Like, seriously, anytime Pedro Almodovar comes out with a movie, just put it on your watch list. It'll be damn good.
I do like his films a lot. Pain and Glory was one of my favorite films from the year it came out. And you're right. This one, Parallel Mothers, is just now becoming a bit like showing up at like the Loft, right? So we haven't caught up with it, which is why, one of the reasons it's not on my list, because I haven't seen it yet. Don't know if it could make my list or not, but I do plan to catch up with it. So thanks, Will, for letting us know that it's worthy.
All right. Excellent. Jim, what was your number 7?
Oh, my number 7 is a film that we also saw, I think, out of Sundance. It's basically a four-hander, and it's a film called Mass, and it stars Jason Isaac, Martha Plimpton, Ann Dowd, and I forget the other gentleman's name who's in it. Help me out here. Oh God,
just go with it. It's fine.
Its name is Reed Barney, I think, right? And this film is about 4 people who come together over a violent tragedy that affects these two married couples, in different ways, and they basically are sitting down and hashing through it. just some fantastic. This is like an acting class 101. I mean, Jason Isaacs is fantastic. I've always loved Jason Isaacs and pretty much everything he's in. He's amazing in this. Ann Dowd is great as well. Very powerful stuff here. Not your light blockbuster entertainment, but just a really fantastic movie. This one's on all the is for rent for like $6 on all the Apple, Amazon, Vudu. If you get to check it out, it's called Mass. It's not Midnight Mass. That's a whole different thing. That was a different series. This one's just called Mass. I just loved it. I mean, it was it has stuck with me since we saw it at Sundance Film Festival about a year ago now. So yeah, great stuff.
So a couple years ago, we had the pleasure of meeting Jason Isaac at a Star Trek convention.
That's we did.
Jim, how is it to see him in one of your favorite movies after having literally laid hands on him?
I wish I could just have had seen this movie before seeing him too. He was probably working on the movie when we saw him at that time, unfortunately. But really powerful stuff in this movie. I mean, if this is one you probably might want to bring your tissues to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great movie. I did a lot of in high school, college, I did a lot of stage acting, and all I could think while watching this is holy shit, I would love to this would be a really, really good thing to perform in. I would love to act in this. Not a lot of movies make me think of that. A lot of times I'm thinking about the story, the characters, or whatever. But here I thought about what that experience would be like. Kudos also to Fran Kranz, who's the director of this, who is an actor who I quite enjoy. He was in Dollhouse. He played the stoner in Cabin in the Woods, and he also put together this incredibly sentimental and well-polished story about a very difficult subject. So yeah, love this pick.
All right, excellent.
Hammy too, it looks like.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Hammy puts in the chat that MASH should win all the screenwriting awards. So there you go. A lot of love for this film. Well, my number 7 is a documentary. What? Stop. Hold the presses. Stop, collaborate, and listen. Believe it or not, a documentary made my list. It happens, I think, more often than I probably realize. A documentary just squeaks its way onto my list. This one,
you had 2 last year, Brad.
I know, right? Even though documentaries are not typically in my wheelhouse, sometimes they just really touch me and speak powerfully, and this one was no exception. It is based around someone who I think is an absolute treasure in the film world. As a human being, she's amazing. This is Rita Moreno, just a girl who decided to go for it. This documentary basically follows her life and her career, kind of starting with, growing up in Puerto Rico, her finding success in Broadway, eventually making her way into some films. Of course, Rita Moreno, very much in the discussion within the last couple months. She was in the new West Side Story adaptation from Steven Spielberg. She's had a tremendous career. She is phenomenal in so many ways. She was in the Netflix show One Day at a Time, which is a remake of the old One Day at a Time that unfortunately got canceled too early. But man, that really began the resurgence of Rita Moreno kind of within the last several years. And it was so great to see this documentary just explore all these different corners of her life and hear her talk about the adversity that she's had to overcome. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. So there you go. My number 7 pick is a documentary, believe it or not.
Good one. Really loved that. Loved seeing more about her career and how, especially early on, she was kind of typecast into roles that were kind of ooey gooey when you think about them now, how she was put into the role of the exotic female person in some of those movies, and how she took that and kind of molded it into a career where she's probably one of our most respected actors right now. And we got to see her in another movie that came out, another big movie that came out this year that, who knows, maybe we'll talk about it later, I don't know. But Love that documentary. Good pick. Excellent.
Thank
Good
you.
pick. Love Rita Moreno.
Oh, so good. So good. All right. Well, let's move on to our number sixes. Man, we are 45 minutes into the show and we're only at our number sixes. So
We're flying though.
maybe we'll
It
speed
seems-
it up a little bit more. Otherwise, we're going to have to do a part two. But Will, what was your six?
The thing that kind of gives me hope here is that we've only had one duplicate so far, so there's a chance that the back part of our list is going to start to have some jumbling up. But maybe not with this one. We'll see. My number 6 pick is a film by Ryosuke Hamaguchi named Drive My Car. Drive My Car is a film about this guy. He's this very famous like stage actor and stage director within the context of this movie. And very early into the film, this is not a spoiler, this is the setup to the film, his wife dies. And so he ends up dealing with that harshly. He's then given the chance to direct this production of a play in Hiroshima. And the thing about it is he's sort of told as he goes there that he's not allowed to drive around while he's there. They've had like directors in the past who have like, or actors who have gotten into accidents and they've been liable for it. So he has to have basically a designated driver take him around. And so he's partnered with this this young woman who also has experienced some tragedy in her life. And the two of them end up finding ways of coping with their grief through the conversations and the explorations that they have while she's driving his car. One of those movies that, you know, it clocks in at 3 hours long, but man, it does not feel like it does. Like and there's not a lot of movies that I can say that about. Even movies I'm loving at the 3 hour mark, I'm like, okay, yeah, we should be getting to that climax pretty soon, at least, right? And this one, I just the whole time through, I'm like, just enjoying this subtle little drama. And the 3 hour mark, I was just like, it felt like it breezes by like a 90-minute movie. Very well shot, incredibly performed. There's performance scenes inside of it since he's acting, you know, since he's directing this play, and those are fun to watch too. Just everything about this film is a delight. Drive My Car. You may be hearing about this one a little bit in like, especially as we get close to award season. I think this one's going to be one of the ones that might be in some of the foreign language categories, and for good reason.
Well, I can't comment. I didn't get to see this one yet. I don't think Brad has, obviously, either. But it was a couple weeks ago. I was looking for a movie to go see, and in the movie theaters, and I even looked at the Loft, and I'm like, God, there's nothing to see. Oh wait, Drive My Car is here. Wait, 3 hours and 10 minutes. I don't have that much time. I'm gonna have to see it another time. So I will see it. I'm sure I'll see it. I just didn't have time to invest in it. 3 hour movie. But I'm hearing great things about it, and the fact that it's so high on your list is a testament to that.
A ringing endorsement, if you will. All right, Jim, what was your number 6?
My number 6 is another film we saw at Sundance last year that surprised the hell out of me. This one's called Flee, Flee. This one is a mostly animated documentary, kind of the biography of this man, Amin, who was on the verge of marriage, but he's compelled to reveal a hidden past for the first time, and a harrowing past too. I mean, it's this one, it just shocked the hell out of me. The filmmaking here is fantastic. The animation styles are varied, but they all work together. And is significant amount of voiceover. I think this, again, Will, I think this one may also be in running for a lot of the foreign film awards as well. But folks, if you could see this one again is for rental on like Apple, Amazon, and Vudu for like $6. It's called Flee, Flee. This one surprised the hell out of me because you know, the story of this guy. I don't want to spoil anything here, but there are some real surprises in here that are just some of them are heart wrenching, and some of them are just like will touch you. So yeah, it's called Flea.
Hell of a good pick. One that keeps flirting with getting on my list. Did not make the final cut, and that one it kind of hurts me that I wasn't able to creak it in. It's the goods, and the animated sequences in it, because the most of the story is told through animation. Don't feel gimmicky. If anything, it really elevates the story, like this flashback story that's being told. So great pick.
All right.
Alrighty.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for your number 6.
It's yours.
My number 6 is Spider-Man No Way Home. A
Wow.
Marvel movie, yes, made its way onto my list, which is surprising because I am Marvel movied the fuck out at this point. But this is a Sony Marvel film, and they kind of co-parent Spider-Man right now, and I love this. So the IMDb description of this film is: with Spider-Man's identity now revealed, Peter Parker asks Doctor Strange for help. When a spell goes wrong, dangerous foes from other worlds start to appear, forcing Peter to discover what it truly means to be Spider-Man. Without giving any kind of spoilers, believe it or not, some people have not seen this film yet. So I don't want to take anything away from them. This is probably my favorite Spider-Man movie to come out since I think the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man film. And I know we reviewed this movie on the podcast, several weeks ago when it came out. But I loved this film from start to finish. There's a couple things, that I kind of took issue with, but overall, this movie just delivers on so many different levels. Of course, Tom Holland is back as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Zendaya is here as MJ. We've got Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. There's just so much to love about this film. We get a lot of Spider-Man action. We get some crazy cool appearances from villains from some of the old Spider-Man films, the Raimi films, and the Amazing Spider-Man Andrew Garfield films. Some really neat stuff happens. And there's a whole lot more that I can't talk about because spoilers. But this was exciting. I was entertained from the very get-go. And I'm interested to see where these films go from here. What's going to happen with them? There's a lot of conversation right now around the fact that there's not currently a Spider-Man film in development at this point, as there has been for the last few years. So it may be a few years before we get another Spider-Man film. Whether Tom Holland will be involved or not, I don't know. But if this is his last outing as Spider-Man, which I doubt, but if it is, man, way to go out with a bang. This is an incredible film. It's a lot of dumb fun again, but as we've established, that's okay. So there you go, my number 6.
Fun pick, Brad. This one thwips ass.
No, I mean, this one, as Marvel films go, and again, not being a huge Marvel fan, I really enjoyed this film. I thought it did what it had to do. It was not boring. It was not, we could argue how much fan service it was, but the fan service here felt earned. In my, from my vantage point, I thought it did what it had to do very well. It walked the line. And delivered a product that was a lot of fun to watch. So yeah, great. I think it's a great pick.
All right. Excellent. Hammy says, with great lists comes great responsibility. We'll try to handle that responsibility well. All right. Listen, fellas, we've got half an hour, maybe a little bit more. We'll see. To get through our top 5. I don't think we're going to do it. I think we're going to run long, but you know what? It is what it is.
I'll do my best.
But let's get into the back half here. So our top 5 films of 2021 are a go. Will, what was your number 5?
So my number 5 is the movie The Worst Person in the World by, I believe it's Joachim Trier. It might be Joachim Trier. I don't know the Norwegian director's, how his first name is pronounced. I apologize for that. He's previously given us movies like Thelma and Louder Than Bombs. This is a movie about this woman named Julie who is in sort of like late 20s, early 30s. I think she's like right at the beginning of her 30s in this one. And it follows 4 years of her life as she tries to figure out her own love life, how she figures out her career, and it's sort of like a coming of age story, but for someone who's already of age but is still trying to find themselves, which I think is very relatable. I think a lot of times when we think about these coming of age stories, we think about like puberty or like
Teenagers,
high
yeah.
school or like, you know, maybe even like, you know, the early 20s. We think about these times of like market change, but I think a lot of us experience like coming of age moments all the way through our lives. This one is very, very well performed. The romances, their pros and their cons and the things that work, are very believable. It doesn't feel, unlike like one of the ones I mentioned earlier, it doesn't feel soapy, even though there is a little bit of like, you know, who's she going to end up with? There's some really great camera artistry, especially for one specific scene towards the middle of this movie that is really set apart as sort of like a visual showpiece. This movie is just, again, it's just another one that's such a delight to watch. Across the board, great film. The Worst Person in the World. You should 100% watch this one as it becomes more and more available. It's been a while since this one came out, but it's still doing its like I don't know when it's going to end up on streaming yet. So just keep an eye out for it when it does.
Good pick, Will. I did catch up with this one. It just missed my list, unfortunately. But I love the central performances here. Some surprising but like realistic stuff happens at the end. We won't spoil anything, but it's definitely you know, it's a relationship drama, but I think it's a well done one.
All right, excellent. Well, Will, thank you so much. Jim, what is your number 5 pick?
Oh, my number 5 pick is probably going to strike a chord. Another musical movie. It's going to strike a chord for Brad, similar to Wes Anderson. But this one is Bo Burnham's Inside. This was a musical. It's called a musical comedy special, shot and performed by Bo Burnham, who is a musician slash comedian slash writer. He was the writer and director of a movie called Eighth Grade from a few years ago, which we loved. I think the guy is super talented. I really hadn't seen his comedy specials before, but this one was filmed during 2020, during the height of the, you know, what the fuck are we going to do? Is everything coming to an end pandemic? He filmed this by himself, alone, in a room or his apartment over the course of that year. And I think the product is spectacular. Some of the music that he wrote in here is really great, and you know, not just catchy, but I think there's messages in here. I think he captures kind of the huge sense of anxiety that we all had in 2020, and sometimes and to be honest, still exists today. So yeah, I was enamored with this special, even though it was released like a movie on Netflix. It's still available on Netflix. Bo Burnham's Inside is my number 5.
It was I go on record as saying that this is the definitive pandemic movie in terms of capturing just what this emotionally and societally did to us. One of the best soundtracks of the year. And yeah, this one, Jim, I think you watched my top 25 video. This one was in my top 10, and it got pushed out by Parallel Mothers. When I watched that, it knocked it out. Very
fucking
last
Pedro.
minute.
Fucking
Pedro knocked this one out. But yeah, I mean, this is a great movie.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your pick, Jim. My number 5, and I have a sense that this may be the start of the repeated films. I don't know. We'll see. At least in the back half. This film is an adaptation of a 1957 musical that explores forbidden love and rivalry between two gangs of different ethnic backgrounds. I am speaking, of course, about West Side Story, right? You know, it's interesting going into this film. I was like, really, a West Side Story redo? Do we really need this, Steven Spielberg? Do we?
Right.
Do we? But I loved it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think that it brought some really interesting new things to this film. Rita Moreno plays a new character to the film. She has a role in this movie. It was so great to see her included. And I think her character is my favorite part of the whole movie. And I won't go into spoilers, but God, she is just so incredible on every level. And when she sings, I weep. I turn into just the waterworks. A lot of really great acting in this film, including from some unknowns where you're like, where the fuck did they come from? Will be interesting to see what else they do. But it's unfortunate because a lot of people, I think, were like me in that they were like, ah, really a West Side Story remake? We don't need that. In fact, we know someone very well who loves the original West Side Story and does not want to see this one because it's a remake that she feels is unnecessary. And I just want to grab her by the shoulders and be like, you would love this. You need to watch this movie. But a lot of people are just staying away from it. And that's unfortunate. But really, really great film. I suspect that this may appear elsewhere on some lists. I know a couple of listeners in the chat have been mentioning West Side Story. There you go. That's my number 5.
Brad, you need to grab your friend and do like the little Clockwork Orange, like eye hold open thing, and just make her watch it. She'll thank you at the end.
Bring the projector. Although it's not streaming yet, so we got to wait till it's streaming. And then
Yeah.
we can do that.
Yeah. I'm
but
sure
great pick. Great pick. We might hear more.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to our number 4s. Will, what have you got?
All right. This was a movie that I was not expecting going into it, that it would be this high on my list or for it to be just as emotionally poignant as it was. And it's a Nicolas Cage movie called Pig. This is a movie, we've seen a lot of Nicolas Cage has been having sort of like a renaissance, sort of like Keanu Reeves. I think both are definitely getting reevaluated very positively by a lot of viewers right now, myself included. But I wasn't sure what to expect from Pig. This is a movie about this truffle hunter. He lives off in the Oregon wilderness all by himself. Well, almost all by himself. It's him and his best friend, this pet pig. Well, the pig who he uses to forage for truffles goes missing, and he goes on a mission to try to find out what happened to this pig. And it takes him back to Portland, where he has a very storied past that he has to confront. Nicolas Cage acts his ass off in this one. He plays a very gruff, kind of stoic character, and I kept waiting for like these big bombastic moments, and there's a little bit of it, but it's really more about a character who's coming to grips with things that have happened in his past. Alex Wolff is in this as well. Loved him in Hereditary, and Adam Arkin's in this as well. Just such a great movie. Like, I think a lot of people were expecting Pig to be like Mandy or something like that, like an over-the-top blood and gore fest. That's not what this is. This is a slightly eccentric character study drama, and it's so good.
Yeah, definitely an out-of-the-box performance by Nicolas Cage from what we come to expect of him. And I think that's what kind of made people like stand up and take notice, like, oh my God, like that's a different side of him that we haven't seen. And that's fantastic. And I really enjoyed that movie. It just did not make my list, though, unfortunately.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for your number 4. Jim, what's yours?
Okay, my number 4 is a movie I fell in love with. It's an animated Disney Pixar movie called Luca that we saw earlier in the year. I don't know if this movie is going to get any love at awards time or, basically since it came out. But I really love this movie. It's about, it's set on the Italian Riviera, and it's about a movie about friendship, maybe a little bit more like a strong friendship between two kids growing up there, and also it's a story about otherness, and that comes across very well, and I think it does very sweetly. I thought the voice acting here was great. The story is fantastic. It's like an hour and 35 minutes long. It's perfect. Of course, the animation is great. It's Disney Pixar. Just a wonderful movie that I don't think got enough attention, but it's very high on my list. It's called Luca. If you haven't seen this one, catch up to it. It's on Disney Plus, of course, subscription. Definitely worth an hour and a half of your time.
Yeah, really great pick here, Jim. I know we reviewed Luca on the podcast and we were all pretty favorable on it. You mentioned that powerful friendship, and without getting into spoilers, of course, that's such a main heartbeat of this film, right? Everything is rooted in that friendship, and pretty emotional stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
Good pick.
Yeah. Good pick. Good pick. Good color palette. Good pick.
All right. My number 4 movie, I will read you the IMDb description. A former intelligence agent has left active service, but his peace is short-lived when an old friend from the CIA turns up asking for help, leading James Bond onto the trail of a mysterious villain armed with dangerous new technology. Of course, I'm talking about the newest Bond flick, No Time to Die, which is also Daniel Craig's last exclamation point, I think, outing as James Bond. I don't get the joke. Will is busting up. Hammy said Red Notice.
Red Notice is the movie that came out on Netflix starring Ryan Reynolds, The Rock, and Gal Gadot. Like at the end of last year, kind of like a 3-header spy drama. And,
okay.
It was the butt of a lot of jokes, even though it made Netflix a ton of money, and they're making another one now.
Okay. I haven't heard of it, but I'm glad that brought the chuckles. No Time to Die was a really thrilling and compelling film from start to finish for me. It's one of those films that just does a beautiful job, I think, of kind of bookending the Daniel Craig run at these Bond films, bringing that story to a great conclusion and giving us something that is pretty powerful emotionally. I think I said in our podcast review for the film, I'd never really cried in a Bond movie before. But boy, did I cry at the end of No Time to Die. You could say No Time to Cry, because it was waterworks for me. There's some really phenomenal action in this film. I'm not going to talk about it a ton just for time, but that was my number 4 pick. I'm so glad that we got one more Daniel Craig outing.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about some of these movies that, these big blockbuster movies can sometimes fall in the trap of just plodding along, following plot beat to plot beat to plot beat, get you to the end, right? And this movie could have fallen in that trap, but I think just like the Spider-Man No Way Home movie, I think this movie hit everything that it needed to do and did it well, and I think deserves that spot. Good pick, Brad.
Yeah, this is a movie, like, I think sometimes blockbusters don't know how to end. They know how to set up their set pieces, but they struggle with how to land the plane.
The story.
And I think if anything, like the ending was the strongest part of this film. Not going into why, but like just sort of like the way that the film landed, I think was pretty solid.
Agreed. All right, we're getting down to it.
Top three.
Before we get there, Bill Harris from Green Screen to Death podcast. Oh my God, Bill, I'm fangirling right now. It's so good to see you. He says, why has nobody talked about Space Jam 2 or Dear Evan Hansen?
I assume those are on your definitive list, Bill, right? Your definitive top 10 list.
He says that the Green Screen of Death top 21 or top 10 list is coming soon. Who knows? Hopefully we'll have that soon. Maybe we get some confirmation.
Yeah, and he says, how come no one's talked about Space Jam 2 or Dear Evan Hansen? Bill, we're getting ready to move into our top 3. We've been saving the best for last.
That's right. Surprise, motherfucker.
Bill, neither of those movies made my top 3. I'll just end the agony of suspense right now.
And he can only speak for himself, of course.
Whether Will and Jim have them on their list, I don't know. But there you go. Yeah. All right. Our top 3. Will, what's your number 3 pick?
All right. Well, after the Looney Tunes gang gets captured, LeBron James. No. My number 3 is actually a movie that I think is going to be. keep an eye out for it now. This is probably going to be the one that sort of like sneaks in and like wins like all of the Oscars. Like it's just every year there's a film that kind of lands at that point in the momentum, to a point where I almost feel bad putting it here because it's going to get enough laurels. And I could have maybe squeaked like Flea in instead, but I don't know. I just really love The Power of the Dog, the new Jane Campion movie. This is a Western film. We have Benedict Cumberbatch playing a rancher who's very much like a legend in the area. He's the type of guy who everyone sort of is both inspired by, but also a little afraid of because of just how outlandishly aggressive he is in terms of like kind of bossing people around.
Machismo.
He's a dick, but it all comes from like this sense of like, well, toxic masculinity and kind of like where all that comes from, right? His brother, who we also love, Jesse Plemons, brings home a wife and her son, and Phil ends up, the Benedict Cumberbatch character ends up tormenting them as well until more about his personality is revealed through those relationships. This is an interesting little story. I think that it really does like it untangles like the sense of what it means to put on the airs of what it means to be a man and how those airs can affect and creep into and poison the people around you, especially when those airs are used to protect a portion of yourself that you're trying to keep hidden, right? So I think that there's just so much just like there's so much to delve into on this one that you really can't do in a spoilers free section. This one definitely needs to be experienced. But Jane Campion does such a wonderful job of writing. She writes male characters in a way that allows them to be vulnerable while allowing them to also have their rough edges. It's shot beautifully. The story untangles in some interesting ways and always goes to like that next level while also not being over the top. I really liked this one, and I would imagine the Oscar voting crowd is going to as well. I think this is this year's Nomadland, honestly.
Yeah, Will, good pick. I mean, I saw it. I liked it. It's beautiful. I love Jane Campion, the way she lets her stories unfold, right? And she's not like a big plot kind of person. And I think maybe that's, a little subtle for a lot of people, but I loved it. The performances are great. I won't give any spoilers, but it's, I really liked it. It just missed my list this year, though.
Will, I got to ask, are you drinking from a McDonald's Coke glass that they gave away in promotionals a few years ago?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I recognized that.
That's our fine drinking ware at this point.
It's one of my favorite it's one of my favorites for water, especially while podcasting, because the heftier top and the skinnier bottom means I'm less likely to just like accidentally drop it and spill it all over my keyboard. He said before dropping it and spilling it all over his keyboard.
Well, sometimes going for the skinnier bottoms can be an advantage. Sometimes it's not. You never know.
Yeah,
but hopefully it works out for you.
Not a fan of skinny bottoms except in glasses.
I don't know. I'm more a fan of the thick tops.
Oh, wow. All right, Jim, what is your number 3?
We're gonna save time here. First one, we're gonna save time. My number 3 is West Side Story. I know, Brad, you already brought this one up. I loved it. I love the original, and I love this movie too. And I know it's not officially a remake. It's more of a redoing of the 57 stage play rather than the 1961 movie. But I still loved it. I loved the added touches. The subtle added touches they added. They put in. I don't think they overwhelmed it with new stuff. I think it's great. I really do. And we reviewed it on the show. I think generally we liked it. I think I liked it. Brad and I really liked it a lot. So, yeah, West Side Story. It's again, it's not streaming yet, but I expect it probably to start streaming probably right after the Oscars.
All right. Awesome. Well, glad to hear that it did make your list. I suspected that it would.
Yep.
It was just a question of where in your list it would
Right.
land. So glad to see it show up. My number 3 list also has to do with music. It is a little musical in itself. Not a little musical, but it is, it has a little bit of music quality to it. I'll read you the IMDb description. As a child of deaf adults, Ruby is the only hearing person in her deaf family. When the family's fishing business is threatened, Ruby finds herself torn between pursuing her love of music by going to music school and her fear of abandoning her parents. This is a hard one to talk about without going into spoilers, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I think a lot of people are unaware that this movie even exists, which I think is sad, but it's a very compelling, very emotional story of a coming of age girl who's wanting to go to college, and she's kind of fighting that struggle between her responsibilities to her family and her responsibility to herself and following her dreams. It spoke to me a lot. I grew up on a farm. Where I grew up, nobody left town. Like, you're 45 and you're still in the town that you grew up in. And a lot of people stay because of their parents. A lot of people stay because, they have taken over family farms, whatever. I can't say that my family had a farm they were wanting me to take over, but there was a lot of pressure to stay in that town. And I, if I had stayed, I think I would have missed out on a whole great big life that I love. Certainly would have never met you, Jim. And so this struggle that Ruby goes through really resonated with me a lot. I think there's some phenomenal messaging here about the deaf community and how we interact with the deaf community, and how we could be better partners for people in the deaf community. So phenomenal film. Made my number 3 slot. It's Coda.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed this one a lot too. I'll just leave it at that for now. But I did love this one, and along with you, babe. So we'll see.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Such a delightful film. We loved it at Sundance. It's actually part of the reason, like we talk about sometimes the takeaways that we have from movies. I remember when Brad, you watched Wild, you got into hiking, and one of the things that Scott and I have started doing is we've actually started learning ASL, American Sign Language, and Coda.
Awesome.
Between Coda and one of our friends in our D&D group is
Eric.
He teaches ASL. So between those two things, we were like, okay, well, we should start learning this. So we're starting to pick up some signs.
Isn't it amazing?
Coda is no small part of that.
Isn't it amazing how movies, like just movies, can enrich our lives? You know what I mean? In these ways, like, it's awesome. That's why we do this.
Speaking of enriching our lives, the ever handsome Tony Gilkinson is on the show, and he just put his top 10 list in the chat. Coda was his number 2 film, guys.
Wow, it's up there.
Yeah. So it's definitely
Tony's
making some lists.
Very musical, and I love it.
Yeah, a lot of the ones we talked about already.
We got Tick Tick Boom, Coda, and West Side Story as his top 3 films of 2021. They're all music-based films.
In the Heights and Canto, like those are my four favorite musicals of the
year. Indeed. All right, listen, we've got 2 picks left for each of us, and we have 3 minutes and 26 seconds to get through them. So that's not happening. But let's go with our number 2 picks. Will, what was your number 2?
So earlier in the year, I got a chance to watch The Green Knight, and it has stuck with me ever since. This is a new film by David Lowery. He's given us a lot of great movies over the years, A Ghost Story being one of my favorites of his. But this is a retelling of the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, like the Arthurian story, starring Dev Patel in the lead role. Joel Edgerton is in this. Alicia Vikander is in this. This is just such a breathtaking film. The story itself is designed as sort of like an ever unfolding morality play, right? Like what happens when a character who is facing down the concept of bravery versus cowardice has to come to grips with the choices that he's made and the consequences of them, and how do those ripple across the micro interactions that he has with the people on his way on that journey. There's some elements of the supernatural here that are just gorgeously and hauntingly displayed. There's just some of the best like camera and scene work of the year. I think David Lowery knows how to shoot like he knows how to work with like his DP, his director of photography, better than just a lot of people in the game. I love this one, and I also love that this game, because it's very fantasy based. It also A24, who created it, created a tabletop role playing game that I got to play with some friends from some of the different some different podcasts, including Hammy here from
Nice.
Find Your Film podcast,
Nice.
and some others as well. Had a really good time playing that with them and using that as sort of our springboard into the movie. Green Knight is one of those movies that I really wanted to put in the number one spot, but I couldn't for reasons that we'll talk about here in a few minutes.
Yeah. The Green Knight is one that is not splitting our relationship in half, but I really liked it. I don't think Brad liked it much. It was really kind of different level storytelling. Like I love David Lowery stuff. I love Ghost Story. I liked his Pete's Dragon movie as well. And that was very different from what people expected. And I liked that about it. I liked it. It almost felt like to me like almost like a fever dream kind of a movie, right? Like you have these scenes happening, you're not exactly sure what's going on, but kind of at the end, if you think about it, all makes sense. But yeah, good pick, Will.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that I didn't like it. I think if it, tickles your I don't know,
my movie
pickle.
funny bone. Just my pickle.
That's what counts. So awesome.
Tickle my film pickle.
Again, if everyone liked the same movies, it would be boring. And if filmmakers made movies that were universally beloved, I would wonder if they're playing it safe or if they're kind of like swinging for the fences. So I like filmmakers like this who can make stuff that, some people may not like, but some people really do. And I just happen to fall on the really do side. He took a chance. And
it's a celebration of film, and that's what we're doing. So, all right. Excellent. Jim, what's your number two?
Ready to save some time? My number two is Coda. Just like Tony, my number two is also Coda. I'm just going to say one more thing about it. I thought the cast in this movie was great. I mean, the movie itself is a typical like slice of life drama, teen coming of age, kind of rolled into one, and it's musical as well. But I thought the performances were delightful all around. I mean, Amelia Jones as Ruby, Troy Kotzer as her dad, I think is a super standout performance here. I don't know if he's going to get recognized for his performance very much in awards, but I think he should. Daniel Durant as the brother was great. Marlee Matlin, of course. Ferdia Walsh Pilo, who we saw in help me out. What was the movie? Sing Street that we loved is in this one. Just a great cast all around. So yeah, Coda number two, saving time.
All right. Excellent number two pick, but I'm a little biased because it was my number three pick. All right. Moving to my number two film. This is a film version of the Broadway musical that follows Usnavi, a sympathetic New York bodega owner who saves every penny every single day as he imagines and sings about a better life. This film, of course, is in the Heights, based on the Broadway musical, same name. As much as I have a love-hate relationship with Lin-Manuel Miranda, I can't deny that he's got the goods when it comes to musicals. This is a phenomenal film, and I think the music is fantastic. Loved it when we saw it on stage. This film has so many stellar performances. I listen to the soundtrack probably at least once a week. And given that we saw this movie, what was it, back in July or something over the summer, right? To still be listening to it, this many months later, I think is a testament to the just brilliance behind the music. I also like that the film is able to kind of expand on what you can do in a stage play, right? In the stage play, everything kind of takes place in just like this one city block area. In the film, without getting into spoilers, you're still kind of centered on a small area, but you're able to do bigger things. You're able to do some really cool visual things that go along with the music. This is fantastic. I've watched it 3 times at this point, once in theaters, and then I saw it a couple times on HBO Max. That's my number 2 pick, In the Heights.
And we got to see the stage play several years ago, right? Which
Yes, we did.
Kind of hooked us into
Yeah.
this property. Yeah, I loved it too, babe. It didn't quite make my list, but I love the movie as well. And again, I didn't have another slot for musicals, so I do.
It's interesting. Like, I think that for someone like Lin-Manuel Miranda, who I think you could say any year in the last 5 years was a good year for Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's just been on he's had a fairly successful career the last few years. I think this has got to be his best year to date, right? Like, between his first big production, In the Heights, being translated into an amazing film. He directed what I would probably put as my favorite musical of the film, Tick, Tick, Boom. Like, that was my favorite musical film of the year, and it was super good. He did the music for my favorite animated film of the year, Encanto. So it's really exciting to see exactly where he's at and all of the doors this should open up for him, even more so than all of his success the last few years. So it's a good time to be an LMM fan.
If you were here, you know what he'd say? You're welcome.
As long as he doesn't crow too much about his own success and jerk himself off because he's so amazing, I'm fine with it.
I'm sure he won't do that. He's a cool guy. He's a cool dude.
He's a performer. He's a performer too, right?
All right. Well, before we get to our number 1s, we're going to stretch this out a little bit.
Oh boy.
Keep you in suspense, keep you waiting. No, I wanted to give us an opportunity to go through some of the listener lists that were submitted. We've got some that have been coming in the chat. We've been mentioning some of those. Definitely a great opportunity to go through some of those picks. I'll start. Hamstrack in the chat says some of his picks were My Heart Can't Beat, Sam and Maddie Make a Zombie Movie, Single All the Way, Old Henry, National Champions, One Shot, Happily, In the Heights, The Beta Test, and Killing of Two Lovers. So there we go. Nice list, Hammy. Thanks for submitting that. Will, you got another one for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Also going off of the if Hammy's pick was a lot of genre films, I'm going to read Tony Gilkinson provided his live on air, and his is a very musical list with Tick Tick Boom, Coda, West Side Story, Dune, In the Heights, Shang-Chi, Encanto, Free Guy, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Rita Moreno, Just a Girl Who Decided to Go for It.
All right, excellent. Jim, have you got a list for us?
I don't. I would if I had the list in front of me, but I don't.
Oh, that's okay. No worries.
Right.
Let's go with Josh Grippen's list. He's got Barb and Star, Go to Vista Del Mar, Benedetta, Bo Burnham's Inside, which, Jim, that was on your list.
Right.
Dune, Flea, The Green Knight, In the Heights, Judas and the Black Messiah, which didn't make our list, but I know you guys enjoyed. The Last Duel, Malignant.
Oh, man. Yep. Good list.
Good picks.
So many good films. Will, go ahead and take our next one.
Yeah, so I want to read Joshua R. Pangborn, who we got a chance to do an episode with earlier in the year, as we talked about one of his short films. He works at he is the guiding force behind Sidekick Productions, who just released Skeleton Crew season 5 and their musical episodes. So he picked as well Tick Tick Boom, The Suicide Squad, Promising Young Woman, The Power of the Dog, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Being the Ricardos, Malignant, Saint Maud, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Candyman.
Oh yeah, Candyman was this year. Good pick with Candyman and Malignant. I have the list now, guys, so I can join along in the fun.
Awesome. Jim, why don't you go ahead and take Bruce's list?
Yeah. Bruce. Yeah, Bruce Perky gave us his list, and there's someone here that we mentioned and some we haven't. So here we go. The first one is PG Psycho Gorman. God, this is one I think I saw mentioned somewhere. I have no idea what it is. Titan, The Beta Test, Annette, Pig, Come True, Drive My Car, Opera, The Wolf House, Meander, and never mind. Meander was his 10th one. Sorry.
The bottom thing is where you can find it. Yeah.
Oh,
right.
and we can find Bruce's stuff on the Find Your Film podcast as well.
Indeed. Thomas Corbett says later. You guys take it easy. Hey, Tom, good to see you. We'll see you later. Goodbye. All right. Okay, so I've got the next list. This is from Sammy W., long-time listener, very, very good friend. He and his other half, Patrick, I think may still be watching. I know they were earlier, but this is the list that Sammy submitted. The French Dispatch, The Green Knight, The Tragedy of Macbeth, Humans, Red Rocket, Swan Song, Summer of Soul, Dune, Parallel Mothers, and Velvet Underground.
Jeez, right. I almost had a chance to watch Humans with Sammy W. during a recent work trip, and it didn't work out because of scheduling. And now seeing how high he placed it on his list, I wish I had a chance to see that with him just so I could see his excitement over it. But
yeah, I
good
did see that one. It's a really good film. And also, I want to mention there are 2 movies released this year called Swan Song, and I had to clarify with Sammy W. which one he was talking about. And it's the Udo Kier movie that we saw out of I thought it was South by Southwest. It was South by Southwest, yeah. Which made my honorable mentions, didn't make my list, but that's another movie that's kind of fallen by the wayside, but really deserves to be watched, especially by the LBGT community. Yeah, so great list from Sammy W.
Awesome. All right, last list. Will, why don't you take it for us if you don't mind?
Absolutely. Last list was another one that came live on air, and that was from Sean Gibson. Sean lists some movies such as Free Guy, Spider-Man No Way Home, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Marvel's The Eternals, Raya and the Last Dragon, Sing 2, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mortal Kombat, No Time to Die, and Godzilla vs. Kong.
You know, I'm so glad to see Sing 2 get some love. We saw that recently, and it's really a delightful follow-up to the original. I know it might get, some it might get brushed off as, kid stuff, but it's a really enjoyable film. So Sing 2, I'm glad to see you got some love there.
For sure. Well, thank you to all of our listeners who submitted their top 10 films of 2021. Ooh. We have finally arrived at the moment, fellas, where we reveal our number 1 film of last year. So, Will, last entry in our lists. Here we go. What was yours?
All right. So it's been a tough year for Evan Hansen. Sorry. No, also didn't want one that didn't make my list. Sorry,
it just missed.
So this was sort of an unfair year for my list altogether because my number 1 film was actually something that I saw at the Austin Film Festival at the end of 2020, like in November of 2020. It didn't get released until the very middle of 2021, though. It didn't. No one saw this movie until like late 2021. So I just sat there for all of this year just with this in my number 1 spot going, I really want something to knock this off because I want to be wowed like that. Nothing quite came to that. It's a movie called 9 Days, a first-time feature by a director named Edson Oda. 9 Days is a movie about Winston Duke plays this character who lives sort of in this like great sandy area where he's just this house in the middle of nowhere, and but it's not a place. It's sort of like a metaphysical space because he's the guy that interviews human souls before they're given the chance to be born. So, mind you, this came out before Soul. Like I saw this before Soul too. So when I saw Soul last year, I was like, oh, it's like 9 Days. You have a few different characters who are part of this, including Bill Skarsgård, Tony Hale, and Zazie Beetz, who are all vying for this chance to be born onto Earth. And each one is going through this 9-day interview period where they have to learn a little bit about what the human experience is like and sort of project sort of what the souls might bring to it. Winston Duke is, this is the guy that played M'Baka in Black Panther and was stellar in Us as well. But this is like very next level stuff. There's for such a large fellow, in terms of like stature and size, I think that he plays vulnerability better than a lot of people do. I mean, he has just such a soft core to him. Benedict Wong is in this as well as his friend, and the Zazie Beetz character is the character who one of the souls who sort of makes him recontextualize what it is that he's looking for in terms of like these souls that have a chance to be born. This is shot in a way that I love the idea of Terrence Malick movies these days more than I actually like Terrence Malick movies. I think that he has a tendency to do some interesting things with camera work, but I think that he doesn't always, especially in his last few films, doesn't always do a good job of turning those into like emotional beats. This feels like the type of movie that I wish Terrence Malick made. This is a character and emotion-based film first that still uses that same sort of like effervescent feel that Malick brings to his film. This is artistry. This is a movie that just numbed me. It made me cry, and it made me think about it every day for the last, at this point, 15 months. So 9 Days is hands down the movie of the year. And if you haven't seen it yet, and a lot of people haven't, I encourage you to go check it out. You can stream it, you can find it, you can rent it. So please do so.
Well, that's a good pick. I am surprised. It made the top of your list. It must have really made an impression on you. I really like the movie as well. It didn't make my list, but I can certainly second a lot of the things you said about it. The performances are good. I love the story. It is emotional in spots, and it does make you think. So, great pick.
Yeah, definitely some interesting thoughts on the human condition with this film. So,
yeah,
a weighty number one. All right, Jim, what is your number one?
Mine is one that really, I don't think it's been brought up yet, and I'm a little bit surprised at that as well. Mine is a movie that kind of that made me stand up and take notice the most this year. Might be criticized as a little Oscar baity, but it's Belfast. I really loved the artistry that's on display here. All the performances from known actors that you talk about performances from known actors that you don't expect a lot out of, but then like knock you out. Jamie Dornan in this was great. The young kid, Jude Hill, I think is his name. The camera loves that kid. I mean, like every time the camera was on him, he was great. I don't know how they get a performance like that out of a child actor. And when we talk about child actors a lot, it's like, we tend to kind of put them in categories like, oh my God, this kid was like over the top, precocious, like a little annoying. But this kid was not. This kid was totally heartfelt, and I think I really appreciate his performance. Kenneth Branagh is the director here. It's about a family and a young boy in a working class Belfast family during the Troubles, experiencing the Troubles, as they were called, in the late 60s, happening right there in the streets, outside these people's homes, inside these people's homes, and sometimes. And I think I'm a sucker for these stories about like innocence, innocence kind of counterplayed with like terrible like stuff that's going on like right adjacent to it and how they interact. And this was one of those movies for me. Belfast, my number one movie of the year, hands down. I don't care what it does for awards. I don't know what it'll do for awards, but for me, this was the best movie of the year.
I know you were really, really big on this one. I remember when you first tweeted about this one. I was like, okay, so this is going to be Jim's number one. Like that was there's no surprise this one hit the number one just based off your original reaction to it. Yeah, it's a really good one. Didn't make my list. It didn't click on the same emotional level for me as it did for you, but I think that it's really, really solid. And I don't think that there's a filmmaker who's had a better like last film to current film turnaround than Kenneth Branagh, who came off of his last film before this was Artemis Fowl, and he then came into Belfast. Like, good turnaround. Good turnaround.
How do you do that? I have no idea. But he didn't write that film, probably, right? I don't think.
No. That was There's a big difference between studio film that gets like diced up in the editing process by powers beyond your control, and a personal story that you get to sort of be the arbiter of.
Right.
So, it's not apples to apples.
Right.
Well, definitely a strong pick, Jim. It didn't make my list, but it may still show up. I'll just say that.
Okay.
All right. My number one film of 2021. Here's the IMDb synopsis. A Spanish teacher and her student develop an unexpected friendship. This is a film that we saw as part of South by Southwest last year. Later came out on streaming platforms. I don't know that a lot of people have seen it, which is a damn shame, people. But you need to see Language Lessons right now. It's in the trailer. Mark Duplass plays a character whose partner has passed away. But before he passed away, he gave him a present of a year of language lessons. They were going to like study their Spanish. And so these language lessons are like part language lesson, part therapy, part like connecting with another human being across the planet and developing a pretty powerful friendship. Mark Duplass absolutely just kills it in this film. He is absolutely amazing. Natalie Morales plays Carino, who is really like the only other person in this film besides Deshaun Terry, who played Will, the partner. They have just a beautiful coming together of spirit and thought and challenging each other. And there's some sparks that fly when they disagree on things. I'm being very careful not to spoil anything, but as a relationship between two people, I think this is a beautiful commentary on how people can kind of be tremendous. So there you go. My number one pick.
Awesome. I mean, another film we saw out at last year's South by Southwest, right? And I don't know when this film was made, if it was made during the COVID pandemic, or I think it was, right? Probably 2020.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And because a lot of the film, and this is not a spoiler either, happens over like a Zoom. I mean, it's a Zoom relationship for a lot of it, right? So, I love that part of it. Like they were not only did the story in the movie happen that way, kind of remote language lessons, but you can probably imagine that a lot of the movie was made that way too, right? By maybe you could almost imagine that the movie was written differently until COVID, and then they had to write like, oh, well, let's make the language lessons like over remotely, possibly. I don't know. It was fantastic. Didn't quite make my list. Made my honorable mentions. It's like 14th, but yeah.
Good pick. I'm glad to see some. I always love when festival picks make our lists, because it's fun. It's fun to see the big theatrical stuff. We enjoy doing that, but it's also fun to see the stuff that almost feel like discoveries that we can sort of like bring out to people and say, hey, check this out as well. You maybe haven't heard of this one, but it might be your cup of tea. So thank you for picking this one. So really, really good pick. And guys, Doing the math here, 27 unique picks out of our 30 films.
Oh,
We had
wow.
less overlap this year than I think in any previous year. So,
Wow.
Rad.
I don't often pat myself on the back, but I threw out 27 different movies earlier.
Yeah.
That was my guess. I was just like 27 different movies probably coming at you.
Yeah,
so that's awesome.
That's crazy.
So our only overlaps were Coda, Summer of Soul, and West Side Story.
Well, there you go.
All
very
music.
Cool.
Yeah,
indeed.
It's a really good. Again, it's a really good year for like music and music adjacent stuff. So
for sure. All right. Well, listen. Last thing we're going to do here before we give you our socials, so you can connect with us online between now and our next episode, is just quickly go through our honorable mentions list,
just by name.
Just by name. We're not going to tell you about the movies. We're not going to go through a whole song and dance. Just real quick, rapid fire. Will, what were your honorable mentions?
Let's see. We'll go with my favorite blockbuster of the year, Dune. My favorite LGBTQ story of the year, Flea. My favorite pandemic film, Bo Burnham's Inside. My favorite animated, Encanto. And my favorite musical, Tick Tick Boom. All really good picks.
Nice.
All right. Excellent choices. Jim, what are your honorable mentions?
Run through them really quick. Pieces of a Woman. Swan Song from South by Southwest. I have 3 South by films here. The Fallout. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but that film knocked me on my ass and deserves a mention.
And it just came out on streaming this weekend, so people can watch it now on, I think, HBO Max.
See it. The Fallout. Language Lessons, Malignant, and a documentary called Gunda about a pig, but it's not the movie Pig.
It is different.
Right.
All right. Thank you so much for your list. Some great picks there as well. My honorable mentions: Sing 2. Jim, you mentioned love for that. There it is. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Cruella, which nobody else has mentioned, but was super fun. Belfast, Jim, didn't quite make my top 10, but it was up there. And then another film out of South by Southwest that I love and adore, Alien on Stage.
Oh, yeah. The theater geek in us loved that movie.
Oh, man. Yes. So good.
I've not been in that stage production, but I've been in that stage production.
Oh, yeah. Maybe the most anxiety I've felt. And the mixture of anxiety and like just hilarious laughter was funny. Yeah.
For sure. Wow. All right. Well, that draws to a close our top 10 films of 2021. Jim, Will, I know this thing was like giving birth. You know, now we've got to like watch these movies grow up and smoke cigarettes behind the gym when they're 14 and then, you know, go off to college. But they are out in the world. This basically was one giant plugs segment, folks. So 27 different films that you can go mostly watch right now. Hopefully you'll be able to see all of them within the next couple of months. But thanks so much for hanging out with us. The chat was blurring like crazy. We didn't get to read every comment. But thank you so much, everybody, for being with us and sharing your thoughts. Definitely, Bill is going to leave us with the thought of Bring on Jackass Forever. Maybe that would be on his list.
Yeah, that might be
for next year.
Back out to the movies this weekend.
Oh boy. All right, guys, super quick because I know we've run really long. If people want to reach out to us between now and whenever the hell we record next, Jim, where can people find you?
Find me on Twitter at JJP Out West, all one word. My initials JJP and the words Out West. That's on Twitter where I talk about movies and anything else you want to talk about and random shit. And then on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Thanks so much. Will, how about for you?
Twitter and Instagram at whatever co. Facebook is William Lindis. Letterboxd, rank and review movies, and you should too on Letterboxd. Search for William Lindis and give me a follow. And on TikTok, Tony earlier said in chat he was waiting for me to rip my shirt off. Oh, wait, that's his TikTok account. That's right. I have a running gag on there where I take my shirt off randomly in the middle of a TikTok. Thirst Trap? Yeah. I'm at the Movie Bear there. So if that's your thing, come check it out.
All right. You can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has Bear Chub Chaser friends in common with you. You can also find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at iBradPro. Folks, it was great hanging out with you all. Whether you were with us live, whether it's 5 years from now and you're randomly listening to this episode, we don't care when you're listening. We just care that you are listening. So thanks for supporting the show and being part of the fun. We will see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.